What if I told you that fixing your hormones, stopping sugar cravings, and having energy all day long starts with just one simple thing: balancing your blood sugars. So, in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how to stabilize your blood sugars. That way, you can have energy all day long, you'll feel in control, and you'll be one step closer to having easy, pain free periods. Let's dive in. Let's talk about how blood sugar is important to overall hormonal balance. Well, first of all, your blood sugar, in order for it to be regulated, it does implore other hormones. Insulin and cortisol are some that you may have heard of before, but it can also impact sex hormones like progesterone, estrogen, and testosterone. So, really balancing your blood sugars or having blood sugars that are not balanced can create this hormonal domino effect where it then is impacting other hormones. So I'll give you an example, and an example I see really common with women that I work with. So, say you're first having low blood sugars. Maybe you're having low blood sugar because you skipped a meal, for example. Maybe you skip breakfast. But, anyways, you're having low blood sugar. And in order for your blood sugar to come up, if you're not eating, the cortisol is the hormone that is involved in that to bring up our blood sugars. So it's trying to help us out. But cortisol can actually overshoot and it may not necessarily bring it back to a normal place. It can actually now be high. And then insulin can get involved, which would bring it's a hormone that brings blood, which brings sugar into the cell, and that can help to pull the sugar out of your blood, but then it can end up in low. So that's one example of how we can have a fluctuation and how we can impact it. Or on the flip side, maybe we are eating a meal that's really high in carb but not enough protein or fat, so it's shooting our blood sugars up really high. And so this is another way that we could end up having a high blood sugar, and then same thing could happen where insulin gets shot up to bring down our blood sugars and bring the sugar back into the cell. But having these fluctuations of lows and highs, it doesn't just impact our hormones like insulin and cortisol. Again, it also impacts those sex hormones, progesterone, testosterone, estrogen. So, the foundational piece of having balanced hormones is having a balanced blood sugar. And we can see those symptoms through the menstrual cycle with imbalanced blood sugar. So, for example, like PMS, we can have moodiness or mood instability. We can have periods that are not predictable, periods that are heavier, or periods that, like PMS symptoms, like the bloating, the fatigue. Those are some characteristic symptoms of blood sugars that are imbalanced or hormones that are imbalanced. But we may also see it in some other symptoms that we may not directly relate to blood sugars. So, for example, like the sugar cravings is pretty key. The energy drops in the afternoon. Those are some um, key signals or indications that you do have blood sugars that are not balanced. But don't worry, there are some simple things that we can do to fix it. And believe me, it's easier than you think. So let's see what we can do to fix your blood sugars. All right, so balanced blood sugars can start off with what we're eating. This has a really big impact. So, for breakfast, I want to provide you a suggestion of what you could do for breakfast. First of all, eat your breakfast. Okay, eat breakfast, because if you're not eating breakfast, this could really set up a blood sugar roller coaster for the rest of the day. And I see this really often. Maybe you just grab some coffee and you move along for the day, or you get coffee and a muffin. Either way, those aren't the best options. And not to say that coffee is bad, you can still have coffee and balance your blood sugars, but we do need a balance of nutrients, particularly fiber, protein, to help to balance those blood sugars. So, that's the first thing. And if you're really in a rush, you really just have to run out the door, I got you. A smoothie could be the easiest thing that you could do. Making sure that you're getting a good amount of protein with that smoothie. An easy way is to just throw in some protein powder in there, getting some carb and fiber that way too by adding some berries or whatever fruit that you enjoy. Adding in some healthy fat, so that could be nuts or seeds. It could be adding an avocado. It could be a nut butter like almond butter or peanut butter. So these are some ways that you can make a smoothie that is balanced. And I always encourage to throw in some veggies. That could be a really difficult one for us to get um, in general throughout the course of the day, but specifically, I find that a lot of people have a hard time getting enough veggies for breakfast. That one is commonly missed, and I understand that's a tricky one. But simple way to throw in some veggies for your breakfast would be to just throw in some spinach to your smoothie, or you can even freeze cauliflower. Throw that in there. I like to refer to them as like nutrient dense ice cubes because you really can't taste them, but it's cauliflower, right? So it's gonna give you the nutrients that you would still get there, and you'll get the fiber as well. So that could be an example of a balanced breakfast to get you started. For lunch, maybe we're still following that same framework, right? So regardless if it's breakfast, lunch, dinner, we are still following the protein, fat, fiber method. So for lunch, maybe you have some chicken or salmon or tofu, some sort of protein. We have some veggies. Maybe you have some roasted veggies. Maybe you have like some sheet pan veggies that you make for the week or for a few days at a time. Or maybe you're throwing it over some greens, just like a quick salad that you throw together. Again, we want to get some fat in there. So maybe it's coming from olive oil or whatever salad dressing you're using that is oil based, or maybe you are having avocado, maybe you're adding some pumpkin seeds, some hemp seeds, sesame seeds, whatever nuts or seeds that you have or enjoy, and also adding in some carb. So maybe it's having a starchy vegetables. Maybe you have like sweet potatoes or any of your favorite potato. Maybe it's rice or quinoa, but throwing in some sort of carb in there, and particularly a high fiber carb will be your best bet in order to balance those blood sugars. But that's how that could look as well for lunch. For dinner, maybe you're throwing in, again, a protein. Um, I didn't mention, but legumes are also protein. So like beans, lentils are proteins, eggs are proteins. So maybe you use any of those, plant-based protein, or it could be an animal-based. So maybe chicken or turkey or salmon. Maybe you're having some cooked veggies that you put in the air fryer. I like to do that because it's really quick and it's easy too. Maybe you can even use frozen veggies so that it helps to speed up the process of cooking and preparing that meal by adding those veggies in there. Cruciferous vegetables, bonus points for estrogen detoxification. So if you are someone that experiences heavy bleeding, for example, try to get in some cruciferous vegetables. So that would be your broccoli, cauliflower, kale, cabbage. That can help out with your body breaking down and processing estrogen, getting rid of the excess estrogen. Again, adding some fats. Olive oil is a great fat, avocado oil or the avocado itself. Um, Even butter, grass-fed butter is a good option too. But we're just keeping that same framework for every single meal. A snack would be similar to where we're having a high fiber carb, and then you could choose a fat or a protein to go with it. So maybe you're having some veggies with some hummus, or maybe you're having some Greek yogurt with some berries. Maybe you are doing like a toast with peanut butter or almond butter. Maybe you're adding some hemp seeds to it. We could play around with it. And pretty much all foods fit here. It's just a matter of the combinations that we want to be mindful of. So if you have a favorite food, just thinking about or cultural food or any of these things, um, we just want to make sure it has that same structure. But those are some key things to be mindful of as you are building your balanced plate for balanced blood sugars. All right, so some practical tips to help you to balance your blood sugars. One, we talked about that having a balanced breakfast. I recommend getting at least 20-25 grams of protein with your breakfast, ideally getting 30 grams of protein with your breakfast. This is really going to make a major difference in your energy, in how long your breakfast will last you, so how long you'll actually feel full and satiated. That's going to be a game changer because what you don't want is to be eating like every hour, every 2 hours. Our digestive system actually needs a break. And it could eating that frequently can actually impact your blood sugars as well, right? It can keep them up there or not allowing it to have the appropriate shifts that it should have throughout the course of the day. So high protein breakfast. Number two would be eating at regular intervals. So eating, I say roughly every 3 to 5 hours. So there is a range there. You don't have to eat specifically on the nose at 3 hours or 5 hours, but there is some flexibility there. And the reason why there is that range is because we do want to allow for you to live. Sometimes things can happen within that window, so it is a window. Um, and also keeping in mind that being intuitive about it. So if you don't necessarily feel hungry, if you're not feeling those hunger cues, you don't have to eat at the 3 hour mark. Maybe you're eating closer to the 4 hour mark or the 5 hour mark. And depending on what your previous meal was, it can change what how often you actually eat. So maybe you had a really heavy meal, maybe it was like higher in fiber, maybe it's higher in protein, maybe you had like a good amount of fat in there, and it's something that really was substantial that could last you for several hours. Maybe it's like that type of meal. So that's also why there's that range. Or maybe you did some physical activity to where you were burning a bit more. Your body was using more fuel, using more of the carbs and the protein, all those things that you're eating. So you actually felt hungry sooner. So there is a variance depending on the day, depending on how much we slept, depending on what we're doing throughout the course of the day, and depending on our menstrual cycle of how that window looks for you on a day-to-day basis. Other things, speaking of physical activity, is to actually incorporate physical activity into your day. It could be very, very beneficial if you are doing some movement for about 10 minutes after you eat. So maybe it's taking a walk, or maybe it's dancing, maybe it's doing some like household chores. Um, Whatever it is, if you're able to even stand, I would say even at minimum after eating a meal, if you're able to just stand and be kind of moving around a little bit, those can be helpful because what's going to happen is when we eat our food, it breaks down into sugar in the blood. But if we're moving, our muscle actually will use that sugar for fuel. So it then will pull the sugar from the bloodstream into the muscles so that they can be used. So that could be very helpful for balancing your blood sugars. Doesn't have to be anything strenuous, but just the fact that you're moving your body and mobilizing your muscles to mobilize the sugar is going to do something for you. Um, this is a bonus tip. So, bonus tip is adding some vinegar with your meals can be something that actually helps your blood sugars as well. So, what this could look like is having a little bit of vinegar, like 2 tablespoons, mixing it with water, drinking that 15 minutes before your meal helps to break down helps your body to use carbs better, more efficiently. So that could be something. Or if you like to actually eat vinegar. So what I mean by that is if you like have a salad and you add like a vinaigrette or something like that, or adding like vinegar to your meals in some way, um, that helps too. So I just want to throw that bonus in there in case it's something that you do want to try out. I recently worked with a client who was a super, super busy mother of five. She found herself skipping breakfast almost always. And the times that she would have breakfast, it'd be like on the run. She'd be maybe stopping at Starbucks for a quick muffin, or she'd stop at Starbucks for a coffee and not even think about the eating part of breakfast. And she was just going, going, going. And by the time like 2 o'clock hit, she was beat. She had a hard time keeping her eyes open. She was starting to feel guilty for having diminished productivity at work. No one necessarily noticed or said anything to her, but she knew that she could do much better. She knew that her productivity was suffering, and that her mental health was suffering too, and her physical body was suffering. But what we started doing with her is we added in a high protein breakfast, and we talked about how to eat in those intervals. But one of the first things she really did start was having that high protein breakfast, actually eating, even if it was something quick, even if it was on the run. So we talked about some like really quick things that she could put together, even if she like had the ingredients or parts of the meal, and then she would just like get to work and just assemble it while she was at work. But this was a game changer. It was the first time in a really long time that she didn't feel like she had to take a nap at work. And that's another detail to the story. Is she actually would be napping at work. She would find these like small pockets of time when she was working to just like close her eyes and she'd be sleeping. So we're able to get rid of those naps and she's feeling so much more energized. And you guys, this happened really quickly, like within weeks. I'm talking like within a couple of weeks, these changes begin to happen for her. So when I say that blood sugar balance is key, it really is. So if you are dealing with having hormonal imbalances, you're trying to figure out where to start, just start with your blood sugars. And you could be like my client who just focused on first having a balanced high protein breakfast. So now that you've learned how to balance and stabilize your blood sugars, you are one step closer to balancing your hormones and to getting that easy, painless period. So stay tuned for the next video where we'll talk about the 3 secrets to a easy period. And what we'll talk about is anti-inflammatory foods to include, inflammatory foods to avoid that you might be choosing now, and how to really adopt an anti-inflammatory lifestyle. So it's not just what we eat, it's also how we live. So we'll talk about how sleep and stress impacts your hormones as well. Stay tuned, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Talk to you soon.